for joining us today for the Business After Windows live Q&A sessions. Just remember, during these sessions, you can submit your questions on Twitter by tweeting @BizAfterWindows and using the hashtag #TheNewCloud. So up first, we're going to be talking to Siamak Farah, who spoke to us about Business After Windows. Siamak is the CEO and founder of InfoStreet, a leading provider of cloud-based solutions. He's been in the industry for more than 25 years, granting him extensive small business management expertise, as well as years of hands-on experience as a developer. Sia has worked side by side with industry visionaries at Next Computer and Microstat. So Sia, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We have a bunch of really good questions from our participants, and so let's go ahead and jump right in.
Thank you.
How do you think Microsoft's recent foray into the hybrid cloud world is going to affect the future for cloud providers?
Well, that actually depends on which part of the foray of Microsoft into the cloud world we are discussing. But in general, in all cases, it is going to be great for the ecosystem. Microsoft has already started on their Azure platform to partner with people. They have partnered with IBM, where they're going to have IBM's WebSphere and DB2 on their platform, and IBM is going to have, Microsoft's SQL servers on theirs. So you could see that the giants are already partnering with one another. And also on the lower end, as we speak, there are a number of application companies that for the longest time, perhaps for a better part of the last decade, were considering themselves that they were competing fiercely with Microsoft, but not able to do so because Microsoft was and is a giant. And now with this partnership, and Microsoft's CEO openly saying that we're looking to partner with people to bring a productivity platform to the users, they now have an opportunity to partner with Microsoft, and even if it's co-opetition and friendly competition, the ecosystem as a whole is getting larger. So it's good for Microsoft, and it's great for the end user.
Thank you. You mentioned co-opetition. Can you expand a little bit on that for our viewers?
Co-opetition is where you have cooperation with your competition. Therefore, putting those, two words juxtaposing together, you kind of get co-opetition. And it is really the way to work in the future. It doesn't make sense for anybody to be in an island by themselves. It actually does not work in today's environment. People expect aggregation of services. People expect to be able to have choices, and these choices have to work with one another. So co-opetition is actually a way of the future, and in my world is already a way that we live by, and I feel that it's going to just grow as we expand more user bases.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We'll move on to the second question. Since InfoStreet focuses on small businesses, how do you feel small businesses are adapting to the cloud?
Well, it's very interesting. If you go back even maybe 10 or 15 years ago, small businesses were at a great disadvantage because they don't have the IT staff and the budget dollars for the big software the big businesses have. So big businesses had efficiency and software for productivity that was not at all affordable or available to small businesses. So as a result of cloud, small businesses have been able to use this great internet democratizer, the cloud democratizer, to be able to get software that was made for big businesses but at small business prices. So they could have very nice, CRM solution for probably about $15 a month, or an accounting solution for $10 a month, where that was unfathomable some, 15 or 10 years ago. So it has been a great boon to these small businesses, and that's why they are coming to the cloud in droves. And the reason for that is that they now see, quote unquote, the cloud as their IT in a box. They don't have the budget to hire as many IT people, so now they're getting all of those in one place, and it has been a godsend for them.
Excellent, thank you. Third question, how do you recommend that an existing cloud company with a long history of hands-on sales move into the automated sales realm?
Okay, well, that kind of depends on the company, but in general, I could talk about two or three things that will be able to help. In effect, we want to figure out a way to automate sales because we're reaching a large mass, and large masses cannot be sold individually. So the two ways that I would strongly recommend to everybody is to be a part of an app market, because app market has aggregated customers. Don't go build your own again, because there are plenty out there that you could be a part of that, and you could reach to their customer base, and that way your customer acquisition costs versus average revenue per user, which we call CAC to ARPU ratio, will become a lot healthier because you don't have to spend a ton of money getting people by being in the app market. Second thing you would want to do is try to figure out solutions or adapt your solutions to be embedded in other people's solutions. And an analogy that I use sometimes is that McDonald's, if we went to McDonald's and said, can you be a reseller of Heinz ketchup, they would say no, because we're in the business of selling fast food and we can't have bottles of ketchup out there. But they probably are single-handedly one of the largest resellers of ketchup, because every hamburger you eat has a ketchup in it. So because the ketchup is embedded in their product, it's getting sold without much effort, and that's another way of automating sales to be able to do that. But in reality, what you need to do is you need to change the culture of the company to be all about customer success, not about sales, meaning that the old adage of don't forget selling with installing doesn't work anymore. This is a service-oriented industry, and people are your customers, and they're as good as their last experience. They could use your product but have two bad experiences and they will go away. They are no longer locked into you because of the OS, because of deployment, or because of any of the things that in the past people were locked into. So they could walk away at any time. So your quote-unquote system has to be on its best behavior and stand by itself and on the strength of its product. And when you do that, you have minimized churn, which once again increases your revenue per user, and you'll be able to take your customer service people and turn them into customer success people, and they should be more consultative, tell them what other apps they should get to work with them together and enhance the user experience.
Now I'm going to want a burger for lunch. This is really good. So you spoke a little bit about the value of joining an app market. Can you tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the processes that would go into that, how you would choose an app market that you might want to be a part of, how you would contact those people and move forward, that kind of thing?
Right. So there are some app markets that are vertically oriented. So if you're a vertically oriented product, you should try to be in those app markets. And don't be so worried about what my margins are and everything like that, because remember, some of these come from the customer acquisition cost. Let me give you an example. On average, a telecom customer costs somewhere around $760 in order to be acquired. So that telecom customer, be it any one of the large ones, is almost all around the same number. That has to be somewhat around 12 months or so a client before the company could make money. So when you think about that, you have a $760 acquisition cost that you could play with. And the way you could play with that is you could go to the app market and say, we could work together, provide you with a nice healthy rev share and do some integration costs with them. So then you have built yourself an avenue to go further. So if you're vertical, you got to go to the vertical app market. If you're going to one of the horizontals like our Sky App Market or Google, it all depends on the app market. Some of the app markets are just referral based, so you pay a fee and they act like a traffic cop, and then basically when people search, they send them to you. And some of them, like our Sky App Market, are actually integrated. And for integration, you basically need an API for provisioning, and you need an API for usage if there's usage metering, and single sign-on. So those are the two things that you really need, APIs and single sign-on. And as a result, you could be in an app market. Some companies come to our app market within 2 days, and considering the effort of 2 days of building APIs versus the potential market you could reach, which would cost you millions of dollars to reach, hundreds of thousands of users, it is an absolute no-brainer.
Right. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
Okay. Question number 4. Factors that slow down cloud adoption include security and viability of the hosting company. Do you see opportunity in certification and regulatory compliance related to these areas in the future?
Wow, that person must have been at the Small Business Web conference that I was at 2 weeks ago. Small Business Conference is almost like a trade association for cloud applications who sell to small businesses. And one of the items discussed was what kind of regulatory system we could put in place to bring customer more comfort level, and also a way for them to be able to differentiate from one service to another. So I see that would happen in the future. However, due to the nature of the cloud, it being fast moving and also it expanding so much, I don't envision a very, very strict solution. It would be more like a Better Business Bureau stamp versus one that says, these are ironclad rules.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. Oh, all right. So you talk about email being the last big thing. Of the current and new technologies, what do you think potentially could emerge as the next big thing?
Would it be nice if we all had a crystal ball? We all be billionaires. It's so funny because it all depends on where the market goes. There are a lot of innovations happening in a lot of places, but so the idea of one killer app is little by little dying, and there'll be killer apps in every area. Like I always say, in my generation, the killer app was email. It completely changed how we communicated. And in the teenagers, world, text messaging, Snapchat, and whatnot is the killer app. So I don't know what the grade school generation will have, but my gut feel is by that time there'll be a ton of wearables, and once again surrounded around communication, it would be a killer app that it would be communicating your vitals to a central area, and it would be communicating between your friends and everything with you raising your arm and talking. Some of that has already started, but they're not quite in the status of a killer app yet, but they will be. But just a caution that I would say is that killer apps would be, as technology grows, would be more vertically inclined than horizontal and across the board. Let me give you an example. If you were living in the medieval ages, if you went to college and got what is equivalent of, a 2-year college or 4-year college today, you would have been a doctor. And then, maybe in the 1800s you became, a doctor or a dentist or something, that it broke up. But nowadays, even within one discipline like cardiology, you have a special doctor that does, surgery, one that works on bypasses, one that works on valves and stuff. So as technology progresses, the whole verticalization and narrowing down becomes bigger. So my gut feel is that the next big killer app would be in the wearables. It would have to do with communication, but there might be many, many smaller killer apps in a given vertical.
Mm-hmm. And we're definitely, excuse me, moving that direction. And actually, a lot of our other presentations touch on these kind of interesting topics. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to watch them. There are really some fantastic things out there. I hear people talk about the cloud like it's going to solve all of the world's problems. How would you describe the cloud technically and sociologically?
Yeah, I mean, I do see that because, when you get something new and exciting, everybody has passion for it, and people, when they have passion, they talk about it with fervor, and it almost looks like a panacea. But the reality is that it is changing and the way we interact. So let me give you an example. Once again, going back to the older times when the automobile showed up, and people didn't have to feed horses and they could travel 5 times as much. Everybody would say, well, this is not end all and be all. This is a fad, and horses will come back. But the reality is we now see that it is advanced so much that it's become just a tool for us. So same thing with the cloud. The cloud has become a tool for these transitions, and it's going to become an enabler for other things to do. So maybe 5 years ago, or even for some people today, going to the cloud is an action, but in 10 years, having your data, your actions, your heavy computing all be in the cloud will be par for the course. So it's not an end-all be-all, but it is changing how we interact, and it changes how we interact both technically and socially. Let me give you an example on the social side. For instance, before the cloud, or maybe even before the internet, if you will, if you went to university, you spent a ton of time figuring out how to solve problems, certain problems. But today, you almost have to know what the definitions are and be able to research those problems on the internet. The amount of information that our teenagers get on the internet is somewhat substantially more than the information that we got in 4 years of college. So teaching has changed. It has to do more with what do I look up and how do I interpret the results that I've looked up. And as we talked about technology building upon each other, this is one of the reasons that we are seeing such a fast growth, is because the wheel doesn't have to be reinvented. It could be researched, and then you could build upon it. So we could see a substantial growth.
Yeah. That actually brings up a really interesting question that I'm going to put out there. I don't know if this is actually something you can answer or not, but I'm just going to throw it out. You talk about the kind of the social aspects of the cloud. Do you think that that has the potential for expanding to maybe other countries that are less developed? Do you see that having a positive effect, in poorer areas of the world?
Absolutely. It depends on who you talk to, right? So I've talked to some people in underdeveloped countries, and I remember talking to a grandma, and she said that ever since these phones came up, everybody's head is down and they're looking at their phone, and when we get family gatherings, nobody knows who else is there. And one time the phone, one of people's phones was broken, and then he said, "Oh my God, our family's so large, and you have lost so much weight," and blah blah blah. They all of a sudden noticed that. So from an older perspective, the whole communal, tribal, population being able to interact with each other physically is something that some people will miss. However, what is substituting for that is the growth in terms of both your reach and your network. You have people like the old pen pal days would do it with people across the country or something. Now across the globe, you could have Facebook friends, Twitter friends. You could follow news and interaction with all that. So the breadth of information is making up for the fact that we're losing some local interaction. Actually, one side effect of that will be happening, that people will probably have physical meetings at some point in the future, that it will be required that everybody checks their phones at the door so they can interact with one another. It kind of reminds me of these classes that they're teaching right now for letter writing, because everybody sends so many emails that people have stopped writing letters. So something like that would happen. But I totally believe that it is once again, it's an untapped area for people that are in underdeveloped countries. They have never had access to this kind of information, and that could only be positive. Information will be power for them.
Excellent. Okay. Do you think we will have fewer browsers as cloud computing becomes prevalent, and will there be more widespread use of browser extensions to facilitate rich application functionality?
Fewer, no, because there's always competition, and there's always somebody who thinks they can make a better one. You could go around any city in America, and there's 8,000 pizza places, and there's still another one that opens up because they think they could do pizza better. And they sometimes do, like California Pizza Kitchen, become substantially large company. But so I don't think there'll be fewer. Competition always lives, but they will be changing in nature. They are going to be more uniform in their interaction because the users are going to be expecting a certain kind of interaction from the browser, and those browsers are going to look more like native applications that you see on the phone or iPad or Android or even your desktop and laptop. What it actually is going to do is going to help expand the HTML5 type solutions, cross-browser solutions, so you could develop once and deploy in multiple places. So I don't think there'll be fewer browsers, but there would be more browsers that are going to behave this in a similar way, because the user is going to expect that, and they're going to be surprised if they had to go and do something very different for one browser versus the other. And frankly, in my opinion, they won't put up with it.
And so do you think that that's where the browser extensions will come in then?
Yes, browsers are going to be looking more and more like, user interface displays. So that you design your user interface in the cloud and the browser becomes a display agent. And the fact that you could use the same thing and you could use it on the phone and on a tablet and on your laptop and desktop, that's the beauty of it. And the fact that you could work at your office desk and be at a certain stage, just then go home and open up again, you'll be exactly taking off where you were. Not one thing has moved. That's the beauty of it. So these browsers have to be behaving identically in the device. So we always talk about, OS is irrelevant right now, and we are moving to the point where device is becoming irrelevant. So that's why it's very important for people to have browsers that behave the same way across devices.
Right. Great. How do you see the significance of single sign-on cloud computing?
Aha, that's very good. Well, we pretty much built a company around that. That's a good question. Whoever asked that knew about what we're doing. It is significant because what happens is that people don't want to remember 58,000 passwords. And there's things like LastPass and Keeper and everything like that to keep your passwords, and they're always going to have a place in the world. But it's really nice if you could log into one site, like we log into our Sky Desktop, and there's icons for different apps that we have there, and then we click on it, and we don't have to re-log in, and then we're automatically in that place. Or it's also very nice to have social login, where you could log in with your Twitter or with your Facebook or with any one of your social logins, Gmail and whatnot, and be able to go to the system. So the people want security, people want to feel safe, but it is becoming a way that when they have so many passwords, they often choose the same password, they choose simple ones, and it becomes less secure for them. So it's better for them to have a area where they can log in once and use all the applications at the same time.
So you talk about passwords with the single sign-on, then are the passwords automatically generated? How does that work?
So with single sign-on, normally passwords are they don't generate for you, although there's tools for them to do, but they are rated for you. So when you go in there and you put a password simple as ABC123, it's going to say that's a weak password. And most likely, most of them are set to ask you to do strong passwords. Strong passwords are normally 10 characters long, and they normally have both letters and numbers and capital and lowercase and in symbols. So then you could have, an image or a string that is not that easy to look up in a dictionary and crack. And therefore, people are asking for stronger passwords. But once again, the significant is that if you set up a very strong password, which would really be hard to remember, but if you do it for one place, you'll remember that. And then just like today, you go into your laptop, you log in once, you use any of your native apps, you would go to your cloud application, your Sky Desktop, and you click on it, and you go there and do all the login in one place. The other significant part about this is with the aggregation of things like Sky Desktop, you have the centralized provisioning. And let me explain what that means. Is like, for instance, if a company doesn't have centralized cloud solutions through app markets, they would have, let's say, an account with Salesforce, an account with Google Apps, an account with Cashew Accounting, and 5 different applications, an HR application and whatnot. And let's say they have an employee that leaves them either happy or disgruntled, it doesn't matter, and they have to now go to 5 places and disconnect those users because all of a sudden they're going to be billed for that user every month. But with a centralized solution, such as a side desktop one, you come in there, you disable the employee, and then all of a sudden it provisions, it sends APIs to all the applications that that employee was using, and they will stop billing. And that in itself is quite a money saver and a time saver for businesses, especially small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. We've got time for one last question, and this is kind of the overarching question of the day, I think. What does Microsoft think of business after Windows?
Well, I think that Microsoft, especially with the new leadership, is actually heading that direction. Satya has said that our company is going to be a mobile first, cloud first company, and we're going to focus on productivity. And I think that even though there's transition pains right now, and there have been layoffs and whatnot, but in the long term it's good for Microsoft, because for the longest time, because they were the end all be all and nobody could compete with them, their attitude and their products, were different than where they are today, where they have to work with a crowd, where their product has to stand by itself, and the product has to be better to compete with everything else. So as a result, the products would be better, their service would be better, and innovation will come back to Microsoft, and I think it's an absolutely good thing. They have a large, and I mean large by probably, I don't know the exact number, but the majority of the market are using their Office suite, and they have that large following. They created Office 365, so they have a great base to work with. So they already, their transition to the cloud, even though it seems harder because they had to give up some traditional revenue, but from a practical perspective, their transition to the cloud came up with tens of millions of users already in love with their product. So I think that in the long term, it's very good for them, and that's why I like where Satya is taking this company. It took a lot of guts to come back and say we're a mobile first, cloud first company, but I think that if the new leadership was not in place, Microsoft would not have much of a future. But with the new leadership, I think they could regain their place in the market.
Great. Thank you so much, Sia, and thank you everybody for joining us today. To catch the next session, go ahead and return to businessafterwindows.com and click View Live Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here. Bye.
Bye-bye.